Hi, this is the trade activity on the orderIT system for November the 23rd, 2020, and we've had 12 trades that came in, and 9 were identified as buys and 3 were identified as short sells. I'm just going to go through each one just to see the possibility. First trade is AZN, AstraZeneca. It tripped at 11.35 at a price of 53.37. It was tripped as a short sell. It closed the day at 54.70, so it actually came up even though it was down 1.08% for the day. We'll see if anytime after it tripped it was still coming down. As you can see, no, it was pretty much right at that point where it recovered again. So we'll just check to see if the indicator analysis is showing the same type of thing. Yeah, you see it tripped here in the morning, but then after it came back, even though you could see MACD is showing that it was starting to come down mid-afternoon and late afternoon. DI is actually showing very strongly moving negative for a good portion of the day. Bollinger Band, though, while it was negative in this area, DI-wise, and a little bit MACD is actually showing the same thing. You know, mid-afternoon, late afternoon it was going down. DI mid-afternoon, late afternoon going down. Bollinger Band just not showing that result at all, so the price was somewhat counter to the actual indicators that are showing a negative movement. I'm going to mark this as a negative because the price is just not showing any strong movement downwards after its trip price. And there's nothing that gives a good indication that it's going to be coming back up. I can see early morning it is dropping again, but still above the indication price. I'm going to leave it as a negative, just don't feel comfortable saying that this is a positive trade. Next trade, CSX. CSX Corporation. It was tripped at 11.36.23 at a price of 91.57. It was tripped as a short sell, and it closed at 92.06, and it was actually up 0.57%. So we'll have to again see if whether or not this was going to come down below its trip price. So you can see it tripped around this area, so you can see down here in this area it came down, and down in this area it did come down too. There's 2 points in the day where it actually came down. You know, price-wise it looks like it was bouncing back and forth, but in general it was down a couple of times during the day, which would have been a positive trade. I'll indicate that as a positive trade, even though again it would have been one of those stocks that would have been required to monitor, or kind of closing price on it that you feel comfortable with and make money on. The analysis, actually morning showing moving downwards, but afternoon it recovered. MACD showing the same thing, it recovered. Mid-afternoon it actually showing negative also. Actually, very similar to the previous trade. Mid and late afternoon it was showing a negative downward trend. DI is bouncing back and forth. Bollinger Band moving sideways, but again there was 2 points in the day where it actually did drop below the trip price, so I will say that that's a positive trade. Next trade is FUYE, FireEye Incorporated. It was tripped at 11.40 at a price of 14.86, and it was actually indicated as a buy. It closed the day at $14.99, even though it was down. So this actually was a stock that was down from previous close. It still closed the day above the trading price, so I consider that a positive trade. We'll take a look at the analysis. As you can see across the board, you can see OBV is showing somewhat upward trend. MACD, morning and late to mid-afternoon, moving sideways. Late afternoon, it's starting to come back down. So technically, it was down at the end of the day. Morning, it was rising, and mid-afternoon. MACD or OBV showing very strongly positive. MACD, not really. It did indicate at the morning it did trip. DI, though, was showing fairly positive activity for most of the day, even though, again, mid-afternoon to late afternoon, it actually returned, started to move down negative. But you can see Bollinger Band is showing right across the board. It was moving upwards until late afternoon, which pretty much kind of mimics DI. Still a positive trade. Next trade is Bed Bath & Beyond, BBBY. It tripped at 11:40.19. Excuse me. At a price of 21.13. It was indicated as a buy. It though closed at 21.79. It was up 2.72%, so it was up above its previous close. We'll see 11:40 right around this area. 21.30. 21.27, 21.26, 21.22. There was a couple of points in a day where it actually did come above the trading indication price. I'll mark that as a positive, but again, another stock that you would have had to monitor because it was bouncing back and forth, so it was not 100% positive. OBD showing bouncing back and forth. DI, early afternoon it was showing negative. Mid-afternoon moving sideways. Late afternoon it came up a bit and then reverted. So DI is not strongly in the direction that it should be. DI showing morning it was positive. Late afternoon positive. So surprisingly enough, this is indication-wise not absolutely 100% positive, even though there was a couple of points during the daytime that it was above its indication price or trigger price, so I consider that a positive trade. Next trade is BJ Wholesale Club Holdings. It tripped at 11:44.47 at a price of 43.06. It was a buy trade. It closed at 43.60, which is above its trigger price, and it rised or increased 3.81 over yesterday's close, so it was a good positive. And this is actually a positive trade. We check the indications, analysis. OBB, showing somewhat a good positive upward trend, even though early afternoon it reverted a bit. And MACD showing the same thing. It was up morning and then came down mid-afternoon and late morning and a little bit mid-afternoon and bouncing back and forth. DI showing somewhat a good positive movement through the whole day. In mid-afternoon there was a bit of a negative, and Bollinger Band showing the same thing. There's a bit of negative, but you can see by the end of the day it was still moving up again. So this was an overall good stock. Indicators did show that it was moving upwards on a fairly regular basis. FSM, Fortuna Silver Mines. It tripped at 11:45.20 at a price of 6.22. It was indicated as a buy. It closed at 6.15, so it was below its trigger price, and it was down 4.35%, so it actually was down over previous close. We'll see if there was actually any point in the daytime where it was above 11:42. So it tripped around this area, and not much. There's no major movement positive-wise. It looks like after its trip, it just moved sideways. It did drop in the morning. You can see it dropped in the morning just from the price movement, but then stabilized, moving back and forth a little bit, but for the most part moving sideways. in the afternoon, and we'll just check to see if the analysis is going to show that. Analysis is actually showing that, yeah, moving somewhat, a little bit positive in the morning, but then moving negative in the afternoon. OBV is showing that. MACD, again, showing yes, positive. MACD, though, showing that it was moving somewhat positive, so it's strange. OBV is showing moving negative in the afternoon. MACD, mid-afternoon, it was showing a positive movement. Late afternoon, it was coming down negative, though. DI, there's no strong indication. It's moving, it's bouncing back and forth. Bollinger Band bouncing back and forth. I'll consider this a not possible trade because there's just too much, inconsistency with respect to the indicators themselves. It's just not showing that it was moving strongly in a positive direction. Next trade is FCEL, Fuel Cell Energy. It tripped at 12 p.m. at a price of $7.84, indicated as a buy. It closed the day at $8.55, and it was up 54%. So actually, the day before it was at $4 roughly. $4 from some previous close. Previous close $5.54. Okay, so well, not an absolutely, but up. Well, you see, up 54% yesterday. Early morning, up 8.3%. So overall, this is an extremely positive trade. As you can see, it moved very, very, very heavily positive. Obviously one of those stocks that something happened that just caused this moving upwards. As you can see, it didn't really move anything positive on OBV until afternoon, even though it did move up fairly heavily in the afternoon, but again, moving sideways in the morning. MACD is actually showing it was coming down early afternoon, making recovery, and then actually late afternoon showing negative. So MACD is interesting. It's not showing that level of positive movement. DI also is not showing heavily positive. It was good. It was positive for a good portion of the day, but the aspect of well, you could see early morning it was moving very heavily positive, and then looked like it stabilized. Bollinger Band somewhat moving sideways in general. So overall, a good stock just because of its increase in price, but you can see after it actually increased up to that level, it somewhat just stabilized. But possibility was, again, very good on that stock. Next trade is COMScope Holdings. Tripped at 12:30.05 at a price of $11.59. It was a buy trade. It was up 8.08%, and it closed the day at $11.77, so that again is another positive trade. Just check the indicators to see what the indicators are showing. This is at the end of this sheet. One of the stocks. It was very positive OBV until early afternoon, and then basically stabilized. MACD showing moving very positive in the morning, and then somewhat a little bit sideways moving in the early afternoon, and then actually negative late afternoon. So that is very different. DI though was showing somewhat very positive for the most of the day. End of the day, it also showing a negative downward trend. But you can see Bollinger Band showing pretty much a positive movement. And again, it was showing that negative movement at the end of the day. But again, a positive trade by the end of the day. CODX, Co-Diagnostics Incorporated. It tripped at 115.58 at a price of 10.52. It was a buy trade. It was actually down 5.41%. And it closed at 10.49, so it was below the tripping price. So we'll see. It tripped right around this area. And it did come up. It was up. So this part of the day it was up for a good portion. And It never really recovered, but we have a good hour of where it was moving above the indication price. I consider that a buy because there's a potential of getting out when it was positive. It would have been a stock that you would have had to monitor. No early morning movement. It was technically down for the day, so it just happens to be that it recovered in the afternoon. OBV showing the same thing. It was down a little bit and then recovered in the afternoon. OBV is actually showing that it was pretty much moving upwards from a negative to a positive. Well, not that it was negative. It was basically tripping positive early morning but coming up from a negative direction. And until early afternoon it was moving positive and then reverted a little bit back and forth. So it was showing that actually very strongly positive on MACD wise. I think reverted a little bit late afternoon, but again recovered. DI bouncing back and forth, so nothing strong there. Bollinger Band, which again seems reasonable, it was technically moving sideways, but there was points where it was possibly okay to get out with a positive result. NEM, New Mount Corporation. It tripped at 135.02 at a price of 59.38. It actually was a short sell, and it closed the day at 58.68 and it was down 4.82%. And early morning, it's actually still moving down 1.5%. So this stock actually was moving down, and it actually ended the day below its trip price. So that was another positive trade. We'll check the analysis of that stock. OBV, yeah, look, OBV, it started the day a little bit positive, but just moved right down for the rest of the day. So OBV just showing this stock was going downwards, volume-wise. MACD was technically moving downwards. It made a bit of recovery in the afternoon. Mid-afternoon it was showing a recovery, but at the end of the day it actually reverted back and went negative again. DI, very negative for the whole day practically. Again, this point here was making a bit of recovery. It showed there, but you can see mid-afternoon it was very negative. The ADX just showing it shooting through the roof, very negative. So again, that just shows you that it was moving very negative. Bollinger Band basically as a result of obviously the stock moving downwards. So again, that stock was moving negative, and it would have been a positive trade by the end of the day. Next trade is NOV, National Oil Well Varco. It tripped at 255.02 at 13.20, and it was a buy. It closed the day at 13.28, up 7.88%, and it closed above its trip price, so that's another positive trade. We'll check the analysis to see what it shows. Yep, you can see OBV, it's showing it in the afternoon moving upwards. MACD, it's pretty much showing it for the whole monitoring period that it was moving upwards. End of the day, it was making well, not a recovery, it was turning back negative at the end of the day. DI though, actually DI showing it very strongly for the whole day. And Bollinger Band, again, just showing you that it's moving up. And this aspect of MACD coming down a bit, you can see that that's somewhat as a result of the Bollinger Band. At the end of the day, it's moving sideways, which is good because it didn't revert and move downwards. But again, you can see from the whole day it was moving upwards, and then late afternoon it started moving sideways. Still a positive trade. Next trade is NNDM, Nano Dimensions Limited. It tripped at 3 p.m. 07 at a price of $5.20. It was a buy. It closed the day at 15.18, but it was up 16.93%. So this stock was actually up a good amount. It did close below its tripping price. It, though, again, early morning look showing it's up 5.31%. So this would have been definitely a positive trade. We'll see if there's any point after tripping price, which was got around here, So definitely not. It basically came up and then fell or stabilized. I guess a bit below that. We'll just check to see if the stock OBV not really positive across the board. It is positive, but you can see a little bit of bouncing. MACD is actually showing as much negative as positive. They say early afternoon it was just moving downwards. Late afternoon. DI showing the same thing, bouncing back and forth, and Bollinger Band, you can see it came up a bit in the morning, came down and stabilized inside. I'll consider that a possible trade, but not 100% positive because of the fact that it didn't close obviously the day above, and the indicators are not showing strongly in a positive direction. It could have just been the aspect that people were getting out because of the stock moving up above its opening price today by a good amount. It was up 16.90%, so you know it's a good stock. And while not a positive on the day that it was tripped, you can see that it's definitely a positive on the day afterwards. So not a positive day during, but day after this would have been a positive. I'll leave it as a possible just because of the fact that it didn't, show strongly direction movement-wise, the direction it was moving. So let's just check to see the percentage of positive trades. And we have 12 trades, 9 of them positive, so we'll say 9 divided by 12, 75%. So it's 75%. If we take the aspect of the trade that is definitely positive day afterwards, that actually is 83%. So it's still overall a good day. That end result is monitoring the stock obviously and trading effectively with that 75% trading. You can trade it in all stocks, but again, it did show a very, very, very good positive outcome for the day. Thank you very much. I'll leave it at that.